When people turn to healthcare for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience. And all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research. Ask questions. Then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Hey now! How you doing, everybody? Happy Thursday. Absolutely cooking this week on Scott Fox After 9. A lot of great messages coming in for Listener DM Friday. I will do that, obviously, tomorrow. Thank you to everybody who's already sent one in. If you want to get one in as well, DM me at Scott Fox on air on most of the social platforms. There's a lot of things I want to play for you in this episode. There's a lot of audio that you're not going to see on the news, but I think that you should hear so that you are fully informed on a lot of the issues that are facing us. If you're one of the many new listeners to Scott Fox After 9, welcome. You're going to hear a lot of stuff in this episode, again, that you don't see on the news. However, we're going to start off with something that was on the news. One of the things that I like to talk about on the pod here is bias in the media. This is a good opportunity for me to declare my bias. Just so you know, I'm a conservative. When you hear me present information, it comes from the lens of a conservative. Same with my commentary. Now, that's the honorable thing to do, to declare your bias. However, there's a lot in the media that don't. The CBC, in my estimation, is really bad for it because I think they're very, very partisan. I think they're very anti-conservative. And I think when you watch the CBC News, you're getting a very filtered look at the actual issues. I want to give you a great example. Yesterday, on the Power and Politics panel, the host, David Cochrane, was arguing with a conservative member of parliament named Adam Chambers on whether or not Canada is in a recession or in a technical recession. Here's the CBC Power and Politics.
You're the only group calling it a full-blown recession. Like, who else in the country is calling it a full? It's not CD Howe, it's not the bankers, it's not the business groups, it's not the business community. Part of being a credible steward of the economy as a government in waiting is to properly analyze, assess, and define what is happening in the economy. You're the outlier here.
Well, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP is the definition of a recession.
Technical recession.
And it's
full-blown recession is the language you're using.
And it's 3 quarters out of the last 4. Mm-hmm. I recall the technical recession, if you want to call that, in 2015, when the last year of Prime Minister Harper's government. I'm not sure we spent as much time about the technicality of that recession then. So I think it's completely fair and honest to point out that the data indicators are suggesting significant weakness in the economy. If we want to disagree about whether it's a technical recession or a real recession, fine, but the economy is not as strong as what Canadians would like it to be.
Absolutely. No argument there. But when 75% of your exports go to the U.S. and the U.S. is turning the world upside down and shaking it to try to get change out of its pockets, how do you avoid a bigger hit than the other G7 comparators, even the other G20 comparators who aren't as deeply integrated with the United States as we are?
It's a great question and a very good point. But what about Mexico? Is Mexico in a recession? No.
I think the structure of their economy, the standard of living there, their wage cycles, it's all very different.
I would say
right?
The reason I wanted to play that for you is so that you can hear the bias. When have you ever heard the CBC aggressively question the Prime Minister like that? Carney or Trudeau? They don't do it. They do it to conservative politicians, and they try and get liberal talking points in there and try and do gotcha moments with the conservatives every time they're on. You got to recognize there's a major bias. And when you get your news from the mainstream media, you are getting a filtered look at the news. And often you're getting it from the perspective of the left. Now, let's get into the content that I want to play for you on today's episode. There is a lot of it. I'm going to start off with yesterday in Ottawa at the House of Commons.
Obviously, the multinational corporations that he is profiting are very pleased with the way things are going. As for the Canadian people who are living under his recession, it's another story. They don't have $200,000 meals on 3 private flights, Mr. Speaker. They don't have tax havens so that they can shelter from the high tax burden he imposes on everyone else. He can't even bring himself to utter the word recession, even though the textbook definition tells us that he's the only prime minister, the only leader in the G20 who's created one. So will he stand in the House and answer the question, are we in a recession or a technical recession?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are in an economy that is fundamentally being transformed by a government that has a plan, to create a stronger, more independent, more resilient economy, a sustainable economy, an economy that moves from reliance to resilience. And Mr. Speaker, we are already seeing business investment, Canadian business investment up 10% in machinery and equipment. We are seeing our non-U.S. exports up on course to double. We are seeing the strongest inbound investment in Canada.
Well, there are two very different perspectives on how this economy is going. I note the Prime Minister finally showed up for a question period. I also note the Prime Minister still will not say the word recession. Don't you think we need to be honest about what's going on so we can talk about solutions? I know this is deeply embarrassing for him and this government. They didn't want this, but frankly, there was no way to avoid it with these policies that we've had in place over the last 10 years. We were going to go into a recession. I think we've been in one for a lot longer than StatsCan has the stats to prove. But either way, you got a nice rosy picture there from Prime Minister Carney. How rosy are you feeling about the economy? And how do you feel about a prime minister who won't even acknowledge reality?
The opposition.
Delivered was a recession. He promised he'd have the fastest growing economy in the G7. He's delivered the only recession in the G7. While Canadians line up around the street to try and collect from the food bank, this Prime Minister spends $200,000 on in-flight meals for just 3 flights, including $4,200 on creme brulee, $593 on luxury Normandy buttercups. No wonder he's so out of touch with the people whose jobs he's killed. So can he tell us, will he ground his plane and stand up and tell us, are we in a recession?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what I will tell this House is what I hear from international investors and businesses when we travel. What I heard in New York is that Canada is the most attractive destination for foreign infrastructure investment. What I hear from major global investors who want to invest more than $100 billion in this country. What we are already seeing, which is foreign investment that's running in this country at twice the rate of any other G7.
We're in a recession, and the Prime Minister will not even acknowledge it. He won't say the words. You know, that's concerning. You got to admit, that's concerning. Why won't he at least acknowledge what's going on and then lay out a plan to get out of this? All he's saying is, trust me, I need more time. How much more time do you want to give him? I mean, it's been 10 years of the exact same policies. Carney is doubling down on many of those. In fact, there's a lot of people who believe the reason we weren't declared in a recession much sooner is because our GDP was artificially inflated by how many immigrants were coming here. And as I think about it, yeah, that would inflate GDP. That would artificially inflate GDP. Let's put it that way. The Prime Minister doesn't disagree with that.
Taking back control of immigration, that's meant the population growth has flattened. In fact, it's slowed, or it's been negative for the last 2 quarters.
Okay, so was the plan all along just to blow all of our taxpayer money and then hope that the economy will survive by the amount of people they were bringing here? They have slowed down the number of people they're bringing here, but there's still a lot of people here that shouldn't be here, and there's still a lot of people coming under, let's say, false pretenses, phony refugee claims, and things like that. I want to move on, though. We've talked about the recession a lot this week. I want to move on to some other issues in politics that I think you should hear about. Let's talk about temporary foreign workers. One topic kind of bleeds into the other. Yesterday, Conservative Member of Parliament Kyle Seebeck, I believe he is Dufferin-Caledon, he was in committee, the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. He asked a pretty good question. Listen to this.
Sort of part to this puzzle that I've discovered and is the actual the illegal work that's taking place on construction sites. In fact, my understanding is that on some construction projects in Alberta that are receiving federal tax dollars to fund that project, there's illegal labor working on those projects. I wonder if you could comment on that, and what do you think the government needs to do to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, one of the things is we actually, get undocumented workers or TFWs that have moved over from the agriculture sector into the construction sector, coming into our office, sometimes in large groups of 20 or 30, because they feel more comfortable talking to us. And they are working, not always, but sometimes, on government-funded projects. And sometimes they're getting paid cash, because what's happening is one contractor will get the work, then subcontract it to another contractor. That subcontractor subcontracts it off again. And the actual general contractor doesn't even know who is actually on that site properly. And then we're actually seeing fake documents, fake Red Seal tickets coming in, fake safety certificates also appearing. And sometimes they are being utilized, that there are members that they say are on that job, and they're not on that job. Someone else has taken their identity and posing as them, and then getting paid cash under the table to be working on construction sites right across Alberta. And this is not just a one-off. We are seeing this in thousands of undocumented workers working in Edmonton and in Calgary. And this is just one example that's happening in Alberta here. It's happening right across the country, where this illegal workforce is moving forward.
That was someone from the building trades of Alberta. What a mess. What a mess. Thousands and thousands of people that came here for agriculture that have now moved into the building trades, some of them posing as others, getting paid cash under the table. General contractors don't even know who's on the site. What the hell is going on? This temporary foreign worker program has been abused. It's time to have it shut down. It's time to get rid of people that aren't supposed to be here. We got to do this. There's too many Canadians that need a job. This sort of thing undermines all of it. We've got to start making some progress on that. Now I'm going to move on to another topic, one, though, that I know is very popular, Bill C-22. This is more committee testimony. I want to take you to yesterday. This was in Ottawa. This is a civil rights lawyer testifying before this parliamentary committee.
Our concern with this bill is longstanding, and it dates back to really the progenitor bill, Bill C-2. And while we're pleased with the evolution there and the modest amendments and changes that followed, we remain concerned, even more concerned, in fact, about Bill C-22, and that's why I'm here. The concern really is this, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but truly it's difficult to escape the inference that Bill C-22 would establish a pretty powerful regime of surveillance and would constitute a pretty severe invasion into the privacy of everyday Canadians. Our concerns fundamentally are about the intrusiveness, the vulnerability, and the overall secrecy that this bill envisions.
That's just a little bit of testimony there from Alexander Surgener, Canadian Constitution Foundation, warning everyone, be very, very concerned about Bill C-22. You know who else thinks we should be concerned about this bill? The leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May. Again yesterday, she called out the government.
I would now add to that they should withdraw Bill C-22 because, having attempted to come up with amendments to C-22, the spyware bill, we could call it, I conclude that I don't think it can be salvaged, and it would be better if the government just withdrew it.
Don't even try to fix it. Just withdraw it. That's coming from the Green Party. They don't like this. Most people don't like this. Yesterday, executives from the company Signal were testifying to this same committee.
Mr. Tawari, I just have two brief questions for you, which should probably just be brief in response. Is it fair to say that Signal's position, which you've laid out very clearly today, is not about resisting lawful access generally?
No. Signal's position is that laws should not compel service providers to start collecting information that they do not already collect.
Perfect. Thank you. So when Signal says it would exit Canada rather than comply, is that a decision triggered only by direct access to messages, or would metadata retention and system redesign requirements alone be enough to make compliance impossible?
The last two examples that you just stated would also be enough to make us not serve the market, as they would fundamentally change our product.
There are tech companies that are going to pull out of Canada if Bill C-22 goes ahead. The federal government knows this, and they're doing it anyway because they want to give themselves a whole bunch of power in ministerial orders to surveil Canadians. It's very concerning. You may have heard, in fact, I talked about this yesterday, the federal government is now changing their mind. Now they're going to tell the CRTC you can't go ahead with that 15% levy that you want to charge on the revenue of all digital service providers, the streamers, and kick it into some Canadian content fund. The federal government has reversed its decision. They say they now can order the CRTC to set that decision aside. Let's go to Rachel Thomas, Conservative Member of Parliament, speaking on this topic yesterday.
Well, folks, after nearly 2 weeks of excuses and trying to mislead the Canadian public, the Liberals are now backpedaling and admitting that the Conservatives were in fact correct. The CRTC made a decision to triple the streaming tax from 5% to 15%, thereby making services like Disney+, Netflix, and Spotify more expensive to the Canadian consumer. The Liberals tried to mislead Canadians by claiming that it was out of their control. They could do nothing about it. Meanwhile, Conservatives continued to fight. We were told that we were making up a, quote, imaginary tax. The Liberals were content to sit back and do nothing as Canadians were burdened with yet another cost. Until Conservatives drew attention to the issue and pressure was applied, and thanks to our friends in the media, the message was out. But today, thanks to Conservatives holding them accountable, they are finally willing to admit their flaw. In fact, I brought a little show and tell. First one here, May 28th, the title reads, Liberals say they can't overturn decision tripling streamers' CAN contributions. And then an update on June 3rd, the title reads, Ottawa calls for review of CRTC decision on streamers' CAN contributions. Complete change. In a news release from the Department of Canadian Heritage, the government stated that the Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture would direct the CRTC to review its recent decision. They gave this instruction because, quote, the CRTC's new requirements would impose new costs on the companies providing these services, which could ultimately fall on Canadian consumers through their higher prices, end quote. Only after immense pressure from Conservatives have the Liberals finally decided to do something.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the Conservatives for getting rid of that, because that was going to get passed on to us. A 15% increase to every one of your streaming services every month. The federal Liberals said they couldn't do anything about it. But then when they saw some internal polling and they realized, yikes, this is unpopular, they took it away. Well, the downside to this is, other than them flip-flopping again for purely electoral reasons, they're going to pay it out of tax money now. They're still going to kick in $630 million or something like that. I'd like to know how much money the Canadian content development system needs. They're getting a hell of a lot right now from broadcasters. How much more do they need? And when are we going to start seeing more Canadian content? When are we going to start seeing the return of local news? Those are things that I'd like to know. By the way, I am losing my voice. It's getting toward the end of the week. I do a lot of talking in a week, and yeah, it's starting to go. So I'm going to let the audio do the talking for a little bit here. Here's another one with Rachel Thomas. Here she is having to argue with a reporter that wants to try and run interference for the Liberals.
Bill C-18, the Online News Act, came into place because of this government. They promised that Bill C-18 would be put in place in order to provide money to local news outlets. It would save community news. That's what they claimed.
But you're changing the topic.
We recently discovered at committee, because of the department officials coming and testifying, that that's not at all true.
So the $600
there's
million
not a
with
single local outlet that has been saved. There's not an advancement in local news that has been had. That's with the full implementation of Bill C-18. Bill C-11 hasn't been fully implemented. The Online Streaming Act has not been fully implemented. The CRTC is still working out the regulations. But I can guess that based on C-18 not being effective and in fact actually squashing the local news outlets, I can guess that Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, will have a similar effect.
Why are reporters trying to run interference for the government? That was another example, just like I did off the top. Absolutely crazy that this is the media in Canada that gets to be in the House of Commons and appears on our national newscasts and in our big papers and publications. Absolutely crazy.
When people turn to healthcare for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience. And all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research. Ask questions. Then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
Let me see here. I've got other stuff I want to do. Oh, you know what? There was a news conference held this morning at the House of Commons. It was Dean Allison, Conservative Member of Parliament, announcing an inquiry into COVID-19 vaccines. This is good. Let's hear it.
Canadians should never be afraid to tell their stories, and government should never be afraid to listen. Today, I want to highlight two reasons why these stories matter and why Canada needs a more thorough examination of its pandemic response. First, we can't ignore the experience of Canadians who were injured following the vaccination. The government recognizes this, even the Liberals recognize this, and federal reporting through the public health has said that there's been over 58,000 adverse events reported in Canada, including more than 11,000 classified as serious. The Federal Vaccine Injury Support Program had received more than 3,500 claims. More than 3,000 of those claims were deemed admissible for review, and so the government acknowledged that people had been injured, and yet only over 250 people have been compensated. Those numbers alone tell the story on just how slow and unfair the process has been. Many individuals tell us they have struggled to be heard, struggled to navigate the system, and struggle to obtain answers. There are legitimate questions about whether the support program is delivering the assistance efficiently. According to the report by the Globe and Mail last year, more than $54 million was provided to Oxarrow, the company administering the Vaccine Injury Support Program, with more than $36 million being spent on administration. That's 2/3 spent on administration, while only a fraction of the claims have resulted in compensation. Whether one supports or opposes government pandemic policies, I believe Canadians agree on one principle. If people have been harmed, they deserve compensation, support, transparency, and a timely assistance.
I think there's a lot more people out there that were harmed that don't even know it yet. I think there's a lot of people out there. This is just my personal thing. I don't want to make you think that I'm basing this on medical fact or statistics, but my personal opinion is there's a lot of people who suffered an adverse reaction to the COVID vaccine. We don't even know the full extent of it yet. That's my opinion. That's good, though. MP Dean Allison, he is a Conservative from Ontario, talking about an inquiry into the COVID vaccine and the government's pandemic response. We're the only, or one of the only countries that hasn't had a formal inquiry into our government's response, into how COVID was handled. And I think all of us can think of ways that it could have been done better. Now let's go to Toronto. Ontario Premier Doug Ford doing a news conference this morning. It was about uploading stuff from the city of Toronto to the province. Kind of a dry topic. Doesn't affect a lot of people unless you're in the Toronto area specifically. So I'm going to skip over the remarks and just get to the Q&A. Listen to this.
I wanted to ask about the airport. So you've said it's a no-brainer to expand this thing.
Yes.
You said the Prime Minister is supportive. But when we talk to Liberal MPs in Toronto, they treat this idea like a coyote in the backyard. They don't want to get too close to it. They certainly are not embracing it. I wouldn't say they're howling yet, Premier, but Can you explain why, if it's such a great idea and their boss is on side, that Toronto Liberal MPs are not interested in talking about this and don't want to have a position on?
So first of all, thanks for the question, Jeff. That's strictly up to the Prime Minister to talk to his MPs. We're going to differ, the mayor and I, but I respect what she believes, and I believe that there's going to be thousands of jobs created over this expansion, but it's going to make the runway a lot safer, extending the runway.
That's pretty much what I expected the Premier to say there. Why is there not nonstop news coverage of cracks in the Liberal Party? It's not unanimous. There are a number of stories popping up lately about issues within the Liberal Party. There's one out today talking about Mark Carney and his management style. Apparently, he yells. Apparently, he's told Liberals, get behind our program or shut your mouth. Don't speak to the media, is what he told a lot of them. Real interesting stuff. I'm not entirely surprised. I got to think there's some unhappy Liberals there. I got to think that there's some people within Mark Carney's caucus that are not happy with how things are being run. Let's get to another question here for Premier Ford.
Earlier this morning, you announced a crackdown on World Cup tickets that are being sold beyond the new rules that your government introduced. Yes. Why did this step take so long, considering the bill was passed weeks ago?
Well, I think we didn't take long at all. We're moving like greased lightning. We're the only jurisdiction in Canada that's doing this. We want the average person to be able to go to venues, sports venues, concerts, without getting gouged. And I don't have to tell all of you and the listeners about getting gouged for tickets. Some of these resellers are gouging the people 10, 20 times the cost of a ticket. And this is such a great thing for the people of Ontario, that they can actually go to an affordable concert, an affordable sports venue. This is a massive win for the people of Ontario. So we're moving extremely fast on this. And we're going to hold people accountable. We've increased the fines, I think, up to $25,000. We're making the list public for people that want to try to take advantage of the taxpayers. We're here to protect the taxpayers. They're there to make a profit. I have no problem with companies making a profit. I have a problem with monopolies and gouging the average citizen that can't bring their kids to a game. It's unfortunate. It's got to this point because, no other cities in North America, the people, nowhere else do they get gouged like they do in the city of Toronto.
Well, I'm glad he said it. The Premier talking about some legislation that his government introduced that was to cap how much you can resell a ticket for, and it can't be above face value. You can't make any money off of that. Now, the Premier at the end of his remarks talked about taking on monopolies and corporations, exploiting people, driving up the price. I would assume he's talking about Live Nation and Ticketmaster. But he's not saying that because Live Nation and Ticketmaster are partners with the Ontario government on the expansion of the RBC Amphitheatre, which is at the new Ontario Place that Doug Ford is building. I don't know where this stands, but the Premier giving off the impression that things all of a sudden got more affordable is simply not realistic. Have things gotten more affordable? Have you tried to buy concert tickets for this summer? Does it seem like people are complying with the new law? I don't get the vibe they are. In particular, FIFA itself. Those tickets are going for way over face value. What are we going to do about that? Because we're also partners with FIFA. I did the Premier of Ontario. Let's do the Premier of Alberta. Yesterday, Danielle Smith was in Quebec City. Listen to a little bit of what she had to say.
Understand you correctly, are you saying that this referendum initiative, which you don't support, has helped you get concessions from Ottawa?
No, it's not what I said. I said that there were legitimate issues in Alberta that caused people to lose hope in Canada. And the Prime Minister and I together decided that we were going to work to address them. And that's what the MOU ended up coming up with. He clearly made some concessions. We made some concessions, but that's how Confederation works. You don't get 100% of what you want. But the Prime Minister and I were interested in a win-win, and I think we got that.
Thank you.
Hi there, Geneviève Beauchemin from CTV News. Hi, Premier. Are there any lessons that you're looking at from past referendums?
And it's part of the reason why we're going to make sure that we make the strongest case possible for a renewed confederation. I think we have to be very clear that the people of my province are very upset with the way we've been treated for the last 10 years. The example I gave in my speech was, imagine if an Alberta politician had come here and tried to shut down your hydroelectric business and say you couldn't develop your aluminum industry anymore. That's what Stephen Guilbeault did to our province. And that's the reason why people are so frustrated and why they lost hope. It cost jobs, it cost economic growth, it cost us our ability to generate revenues to pay for the things that we care about. And we're now reversing that. And that's the key, is that I think there's a recognition that we can't keep going the way we were going. We don't want the next 10 years to be the same as the last 10 years. And it takes some time to win the hearts and minds of people. But I think everybody is committed to trying to do that. And I'm grateful for it.
Okay, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith talking about the referendum on the referendum that's going to happen in October.
When people turn to healthcare for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing orderlymeds.com. Orderly Meds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience. And all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research. Ask questions. Then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
One more. I got to play this for you because one of the things that we've been talking about a lot for the last number of years is housing. I want to take you to yesterday in the House of Commons. NDP former interim leader Don Davies, I think I got his title right. He pointed out something that I think people should hear.
In the last election, Liberals pledged to double Canada's rate of residential construction to 500,000 homes per year over the next decade. But according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, this government will produce only 26,000 homes by 2030 through the flagship Build Canada Homes. Can the Minister explain this massive gap between what was promised and what's being delivered with respect to affordable housing?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, like I said, we have made generational investment in housing. In fact, if you look at the cost of housing measure between 2026 through 2030 and 31, you're looking at about $56 billion of investments to make sure that we build the homes that Canadians need in this country.
It's just gaslighting. They're just saying things that they want on the news. They're not actually answering questions, and they're certainly not being accountable. We talked about this last year, right here on this pod. It was probably all lies when they said, we'll be building 500,000 homes a year for the next 10 years. In reality, 26,000 by 2030. Let me play it for you again. This is numbers from the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
In the last election, Liberals pledged to double Canada's rate of residential construction to 500,000 homes per year over the next decade. But according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, this government will produce only 26,000 homes by 2030 through the flagship Build Canada Homes.
People at Build Canada Homes are all getting real rich. Lots of bonuses getting handed out. Lots of congratulations. Lots of meetings. Lots of celebrating. 26,000 homes by 2030. Not 500,000 homes every year. That's what they promised us. People like me said that's not even close to realistic. That's a joke. Who takes them seriously when they say that? I guess the electorate did, because it helped get them in power. Well, here we are. You got promised 500,000 a year. You're getting 26,000 over the next 4 years instead. But a lot of money's getting spent. You heard the finance minister talk about how much they're spending on this, generational investments. And the Parliamentary Budget Officer is expecting 26,000 homes over 4 years, roughly 8,000 a year. Somewhere around there anyway. Friends, I'm going to wrap it up. My voice is suffering here today, but that's okay. I'll get some tea, lemon, and honey into me, and I'll be ready to go for listener DMs tomorrow. If you want to send one in, by all means, I'd love to hear from you. It doesn't have to be about politics. Could be about anything. News, sports, the weather, whatever's on your mind. Love to hear from you at Scott Fox On Air. Catch you right back here in less than 24 hours. And right now, I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.